No, should I mute?
I
Nope, we're
can't
on
hear
the
you,
air.
Max.
I can hear you,
I don't
Max.
see
Yep.
you though.
No, Max is
Max
saying.
doesn't get his inbox.
Okay, we're live. Ripping. So the intent here was to make it so that people can interact if they want to live, but also to make it so that if they just want to watch this later, they get to watch it later. Connor, why don't I do like a quick intro of what I know about you, and then you clean that shit up, and we kind of go from there.
Sounds great. Yeah, thanks for
Ripping.
having me on.
Yeah, psyched to have you on. One of the sharper dudes in DePIN. Always good to get your perspective. So let's see, based out of Miami, I think from Florida originally, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And went and worked. First big job was at BCG, one of the big three consulting firms, Boston Consulting Group. And then you started, kind of got into the deep in stuff with Helium. You were early in Helium, I think earlier than either Max or I. Started Second Element and then worked for Hexagon Wireless doing BD for them. And then now you get this proof of coverage podcast. So basically, the kind of takeaway there is that you've been in this space as long as anyone, sharp dude, and you kind of got a good perspective on what's going on. Did I miss anything of the big stuff?
No, I think that was great. Appreciate it. And I think the only thing you did miss, which is due to no fault of your own, is that I actually just signed an offer with IOTEX last night. So
Very
deep
cool.
in
Congratulations.
the reveal here. Yeah, I haven't tweeted or anything about it yet. I'm sure I will at some point.
Cool.
But
Are you
yeah,
guys, you're gonna do some
IOTEX.
advisory board stuff with them?
No, full time. So doing BD for them. I mean, I'm sure you've seen like they've been making a big push into the DePIN space. Like
Yep.
DePIN's kind of come up in parallel to them. Like they've been working on kind of IoT data and infrastructure as it
Yeah.
applies to blockchains for years since
Yep.
2018. And this whole DePIN space just popped up kind of in parallel, and I think it's going to be a really big like sector of growth for them.
No,
So yeah, I
cool.
mean, excited to kind of merge the two worlds, and have been involved with them for a bit now. Also, just kind of part time, like helped out with their panel in Austin this past week.
That's right. That was going to be one of the questions. I wanted to start with. Let's see. You had a recent article on your Substack. You read a bunch of pretty good articles that give folks a good idea of kind of what's going on, big picture strategy style. And the last one was "Survival of the Littest," which is like a funny title, and why it's deep in, not tipping. I wanted to kind of dive into that a little bit and just see what your perspective is on, let's say, the deep in space right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it was really kind of inspired by Mike Zyko's podcast with Moonshot Research.
Mm-hmm.
So Mike's an investor at Lattice. They've been doing a lot of deep in tip in investing. Tip in's actually the
It's Mike's
term
term,
they use
yeah.
in the space. Yeah, token incentivized physical infrastructure networks. So in that podcast, he kind of walked it back a bit, and he was like, in the bear market, we think the decentralized part of these networks is more interesting or maybe more relevant than the token incentivized part of them.
Yep.
And so, I mean, coming from the guy that invented the tip-in terminology himself, like to say that I thought was interesting. And then I was thinking like, what about these decentralized networks is actually, you know, very valuable? Like how do they create value, and what about the decentralized nature of them creates that value?
Yep.
And I tried to apply that across like all the different types of projects because, it's great that Deepin's grown, but now there's energy projects, there's car mobility data projects, there's obviously wireless projects. So trying to like come up with a mental framework for why decentralization in those widely varying industries and deep networks is important was something I thought that would be interesting to put out there. So basically, I boiled it down to like the decentralization of these networks allows for three things that create value. One is net new use cases that are often powered by just being able to collect more and better data, like at the edges of a network. So everyone that has a car putting a demo device in their car, for instance, like that's just not really possible today. So then if they collect all that data and open source it, a developer ecosystem can pop up on top of that, and decentralized applications or centralized applications can be used there. And then the other two I'll touch on briefly. One was like you can incentivize your early adopters, early contributors to with tokens to give them financial upside if the network that they're building, succeeds, has real world demand, and also give them some say in terms of governance rights with those tokens.
Yep.
And the third is just providing like the services that we see today. So we'll use like wireless connectivity, for instance, in Helium. Like, obviously everyone has cell phones, they connect to the internet. That segment of the market works. But if you can provide that service more cheaply due to different unit economics by decentralizing a lot of the costs of building a wireless network out to community contributors, you can provide the same service, more cheaply or more efficiently. So yeah, those three things
Fingers
will.
crossed, right? Hopefully,
That's
it's
the
a better
goal. That
service.
is
Yeah,
the goal. Right. Yeah. I mean, in theory, it works, and I think it'll be really exciting to see. I think a lot of teams are pushing towards real world demand and getting it on chain. I saw GeoNet, I think it's doing $8,000 a month, and they just put that on chain. So yeah, I mean, exciting times. I think the best thing about DePIN right now is like even through this pretty tough crypto winter, I think it's safe to say like we're fully in that. But I hear about new DePIN projects popping up every single day, attacking
yeah.
different problems in different ways, even attacking some of the same problems now, and they're differentiating in like terms of how they go to market and that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, super exciting times.
I'm psyched. I mean, we have the Drive people, and I'd never heard of that project before. Those guys are coming on tomorrow, super early tomorrow morning. They're out of Dubai. So it's like, yeah, there's more and more popping up every day, and that was the intent with the show, is just to give people access to that information as early as possible. Okay, so walk me through the IOTEX news is pretty cool. I'm psyched for you. Walk me
Thank
through
you.
that panel and kind of what people missed if they didn't go to Austin and see what was going on. Was there any kind of big points? What were you hitting there?
Yeah, so the panel was about, the question of if DePIN, or I would say when DePIN will drive the next wave of crypto adoption. So I think been this narrative that has been growing around DePIN and real world use cases, and especially in a bear market when a lot of the kind of more hyped but far off projects and innovations are dying out or like, just struggling. I think there's just a building narrative around DePIN and real world usage. So IOTEX put on, an event like an after party, 6 to 10 p.m. called Real World. It's like one of their Real World series of events. So they did one
Yep.
in Denver for ETH Denver. They went to Hong Kong and Tokyo as well.
Yep.
And basically it was, drinks, appetizers, and then we had a 45-minute panel on that topic, like will DePIN drive the next wave of crypto adoption. And so I was moderating that panel,
Mm-hmm.
and we had two investors and two builders. I would categorize them as. So the investors were Sal Gala from Escape Velocity.
Yeah, he's coming on tomorrow. Psyched.
Oh, very cool. Love Sal. Yeah, and Alpin Sheth from Borderless
Okay.
Capital. So both of those firms are very heavy in the DePIN space, like
Yep.
building out PCs, investing in companies. And then the two builders were Scott Siegel from the Helium Foundation, COO there, and Ralan Chai, the CEO of IOTEX. So, I mean, I asked them a bunch of different questions. I mean, started off with the typical kind of like introduce yourself, why is DePIN different than the rest of crypto? Because we
Yeah.
had a very like obviously crypto native audience at
Yep.
a crypto conference, but I think a lot of people are still starting to hear about DePIN, like what is DePIN, why is it different? So we asked them that, um,
Was there
and
a
then just
takeaway that like you walked off the stage and you were like, "Damn, my mind changed about this," or was there anything that kind of hit you as you finished up that day after that, after moderating that panel?
yeah, I think there were some things that both Sal and Alpin said that were interesting. I mean, especially Alpin around like almost like evangelization of DePIN, if that makes sense. Like there there was a question a Twitter user asked that I then used for the panel, which was like, how can the community get involved
Yeah.
to try to solve some of the short and long term challenges of like crypto and DePIN adoption? And I think both Sal and Alpin had interesting things to say around just like as a community member, like don't be afraid to tinker with things, like talk with the team. A lot of these projects in their communities are so small, especially in this bear market where there's not a ton of
Yep.
like speculative hype. Like
Yep.
React somehow only has like 250 people in their Discord,
Yeah.
and I'm just like super bullish on their team, and the
Oh, React's
energy
gonna
market is
crush it.
massive.
They're in like shadow mode right now, but they're gonna crush.
Yeah, and it's like I mean, if there was a bull market going on right now, there'd be 2,500 people in the
Yeah.
Discord. So like,
Yep.
there's a lot of opportunity here for community members and investors and everyone else to really tinker with things and explore and help out projects and beta test hardware is what I'm
Yeah.
doing now. Like, there's a lot of different ways to get involved, and it doesn't always necessitate spending money to buy a hardware device. There's
Right.
other ways to get involved. Like, I mean, like what you're doing now, frankly, right? Like
Oh
I
yeah.
think your channel and your efforts have been fantastic in terms of like helium education, and it's really cool you've kind of grown with the space and expanded to deepen as well.
Right on. Let's see. Do you have a favorite project now that you're on the IOTEX camp? I'm expecting it comes out of the IOTEX stable, but is there anything else that you're like, dude, I think this one's going to be banger? You talked about React. Anything else that you're psyched on? I know in the article you mentioned a couple.
Yeah. I think Demo and HiveMapper are pretty almost like obvious choices
Yeah.
at this point. Like they've both seen pretty significant uptake, funding, all of that. So as Sal always tries to convince me to be more unconventional, non-conventional in terms of picks, he's like, the most interesting stuff in venture is things that are very non-consensus, no one knows about yet.
Right.
So React is relatively well known. I think Jason's done a really good job of like going to conferences, speaking on panels, convincing people how
Yep.
gigabrained he and the team are. And I'm very bullish on React, but also Wi-Fi Map is another really interesting project. I've written about them a bit, and I think they've gotten kind of some notice because they just did their token launch. Got on 5 exchanges, and they already have 4 million monthly active users on their previously Web2 travel and connectivity app.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I think that project's really interesting because they're not like a lot of these other deep in startups, and the fact that they're trying to go from 0 to 1. Like they've been around for 7 or 8 years. They've built out a useful app and product around building a global map of Wi-Fi hotspots and providing other like connectivity services within the app, like VPNs and eSIMs. And so now they're using a token to supercharge that growth instead of just giving out kind of almost nearly valueless points
Yep.
to the community contributors. That there's actually kind of a financial incentive tied to those tokens and potentially governance rights in the future as well. So yeah, also very interested in Wi-Fi Map.
Dig it. I mean, there's so many projects that I think we'll see doing something like that. If you're a nerd, you'll know about the Raspberry Shake project, where you buy a Raspberry Pi with a little thing attached to it that lets you measure earthquakes. And Raspberry Shake right now, I want to say they're based out of Panama, but they've got a couple thousand devices around the world. They measure earthquakes. They let scientists do whatever scientists do and measure earthquakes and atmosphere and all the rest of that. I think we're going to see projects like that say, oh, we're just going to start, bolting on a blockchain piece to this to make sure that we get way more stations than we do now. Because right now you buy a station for $700. There's no involvement with crypto at all. Like you don't get anything other than nerd points, which is which is great.
Right.
But if
Yeah.
we want a lot of these things to succeed, there's got to be some other aspect to it. Do you think of is there anything on your mind that's like you talked about Wi-Fi map that's an undone project where you think to yourself, man, this thing when someone figures it out, I think this is going to be one of the next big things.
Yeah, I don't know if I have any like net net new ideas. I mean, there's honestly almost so many that pop up every day that I feel like that clouds a lot of that's like a lot of mental clutter in terms of like just looking at new projects and hearing about them. I mean, I will say like some trends like I'm seeing that I am bullish on,
Yep.
even within just Deepin specifically, are there's more and more projects that are looking to use smartphones as their nodes, and so there's not
Mm.
really a hardware component. We might have to take the P out of the Deepin. There's software or an app, and I'm just like realizing. I mean, it's like obviously it's a pretty obvious fact that like your smartphone is very powerful in your pocket, but there's a lot more that your smartphone can do that I think a lot of people don't even realize in terms of edge compute and artificial reality
Oh yeah,
and
the lidar stuff, like everything. Every time I look at my phone, I learn something else about it. So okay.
exactly. And so a lot, yeah, there's some projects popping up that are looking to use your smartphone as the node and just have you know software as an app on your phone, and like that lowers the barrier
Yeah,
to entry for a lot of these contributors
love it.
pretty significantly.
Oh, that's rad. It's cool, super cool thing to think about. All right, dude. I want to keep these at 15 minutes. I think you nailed
Yeah.
it. You filled it up with a bunch of really good information for folks who are going to watch this later. Thanks a ton for coming on. I'd love to have you come back on regularly, not regularly, whenever you got something to share. Love to hear about what's going on with IoTech. Super psyched. And thanks a ton for helping us kick off this first one. That was rad, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for everything you do, Nick. Great to see you, man.
Yeah, rock and roll. All right. We'll see you guys
All
on the
right.
next show. Lates.